Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl is one of the most widely read personal accounts of the Holocaust. Written while Anne and her family were hiding from Nazi persecution in Amsterdam during World War II, the diary records her daily experiences, fears, hopes, relationships, and reflections as she grows from childhood into adolescence under extraordinary circumstances. Anne's literary style is intimate, honest, observant, and often surprisingly humorous. Addressing many of her entries to an imaginary friend named Kitty, she transforms her diary into a deeply personal conversation while revealing her growing maturity as a writer and thinker. The work explores themes of identity, family, adolescence, fear, isolation, hope, human dignity, and the devastating consequences of persecution. The Diary of a Young Girl remains important not only as a historical document, but as the enduring voice of a young person whose humanity, curiosity, and dreams continue to resonate with readers around the world. The story starts with Anne Frank hoping that her diary will become the one place where she can tell everything she has never been able to share fully with another person. She receives the diary on Friday, June 12th, her 13th birthday. After waking early and waiting impatiently to open her presents, she goes to school with her friend Haneli and later writes about her classmates at the Jewish Lyceum, including Haneli, Sana, and Jacqueline. Anne enjoys having friends and admirers, but she still feels that paper is more patient than people and that she has no true confidant. Anne explains her early life. She is born in Frankfurt, Germany, in 1929. Because her family is Jewish, they leave Germany in 1933 and move to Holland, where her father works for a Dutch chemical company. Anne attends a Montessori school and later the Jewish Lyceum. After the Nazis occupy Holland in 1940, Jewish life becomes increasingly restricted. Jews must wear yellow stars, give up their bicycles, shop only at certain hours, avoid streetcars, stay indoors at night, stop visiting Christian homes, and attend separate schools. Anne's grandmother dies in 1942 during these difficult years. Anne begins calling the diary Kitty and describes ordinary parts of her life that still continue under persecution. She and her friends form a ping pong club and visit the ice cream shop that still allows Jews. Boys admire her, and Anne notices their attention with amusement. At school, she worries mainly about math because her teacher punishes her for talking too much. But after she writes humorous punishment essays, he begins joking with her. Anne meets Hello Silberberg, a boy who begins spending time with her. His parents are in Belgium and he lives in Amsterdam with his grandparents. Hello tells Anne he prefers her to his former girlfriend, though Anne admits that she is truly in love with another boy named Peter and sees Hello mostly as a friend or beau. Anne receives decent grades, but soon her father tells her that the family may have to go into hiding. He says they will leave on their own rather than wait for the Germans to take them. A few days later, Margot tells Anne that their father has received a call-up notice from the SS. When they are alone, Margot reveals the notice is actually for her. The family must leave immediately. They pack quickly and wear layers of clothing because carrying suitcases would draw attention. Margot leaves first with a school bag, and Anne follows later. The Franks arrive at their hiding place in Otto Frank's office building at 263 Prinsengracht. The secret annex is hidden upstairs behind a gray door. A small group of trusted office workers know about them and help them. Boxes have already been brought to the annex, and Anne and her father begin unpacking while her mother and Margot rest. Only after the first days does Anne have time to think about the enormous change in her life and the uncertain future ahead. At first, Anne tries to view the annex as a strange but comfortable boarding house. The clock's chiming comforts her even though it bothers the others. Her father has brought her movie posters, and she decorates her bedroom walls. She looks forward to the arrival of the Van Daan family, who will hide with them. Later, when Anne reflects back, she admits how deeply she suffers from never going outside and how afraid she is of discovery and death. Anne begins arguing with her mother more often. She feels distant from both her mother and Margot and believes only her father truly understands her. The Van Daans arrive on July 13th, 1942. earlier than expected because German call-up notices are becoming more frequent. Mr. Van Daan explains that the Franks' friends believe they have escaped to Switzerland because the family deliberately spread false rumors. Mr. Vosquigel builds a bookcase to hide the annex entrance. Daily life in hiding quickly becomes tense. Mrs. Frank and Mrs. Van Daan quarrel. Peter Van Daan annoys the Franks with his complaints, and Anne feels constantly criticized by Mrs. Van Daan. Still, Anne studies French and other subjects. The residents must share hot water, remain completely silent when workers are nearby, and live in fear whenever the doorbell rings. Anne keeps busy with French, math, history, and shorthand. She and Margot grow closer and agree to let each other read their diaries. The annex residents have a scare when a carpenter arrives unexpectedly, but the noise at the bookcase turns out to be Mr. Kleiman trying to open the stuck door. Miep and Jan Gies spend the night in the annex, and Anne enjoys the rare company. When Mr. Frank becomes ill, the family cannot call a doctor. Anne also begins writing about growing up, including her excitement over soon getting her period, though later she looks back on these early entries as innocent and awkward. The annex agrees to take in an eighth person, Albert Dussel, a dentist married to a Christian woman. Miep brings him to the hiding place, and he is surprised because he had heard the Franks were in Belgium. Mr. Dussel shares Anne's room and brings news of terrible violence outside, including the murder of women and children. Anne understands that the people in hiding are fortunate compared with many Jews, yet the loneliness of the annex still weighs on her. Life with Mr. Dussel becomes difficult. Anne finds him strict, opinionated, and overly concerned with manners. Hanukkah and St. Nicholas Day arrive close together, and the residents celebrate both, though candles and supplies are scarce. Mr. Van Daan makes sausages, and Mr. Dussel jokingly sets up a dental practice, including an uncomfortable attempt to treat Mrs. Van Daan. Anne grows tired of everyone's complaints and notices how much diplomacy hidden life requires. Anne writes often about the suffering outside. Jews are taken from their homes, families are separated, and hungry children wander the streets. She knows the annex is safer than the outside world, but she still feels trapped and attacked by the adults, who call her exasperating. Gunfire frightens her, and one night she climbs into her father's bed for comfort. Peter is bitten by a rat in the loft. The residents fear burglars. The clock stops chiming, and a radio announcement says Jews must be deported from Dutch provinces by July. On Anne's 14th birthday, her father writes her a poem, and Margot translates it from German into Dutch. Mr. Vosquigel is diagnosed with cancer. Anne stops shorthand because her eyesight is worsening and getting glasses is too dangerous. She loves Saturdays because Bep brings library books. She argues with Mr. Dussel over using the table in their room to study, and Mr. Frank arranges a compromise. Another office break-in costs them cash and ration coupons. Anne dreams of what she will do after leaving the annex, especially returning to school. Air raids shake Amsterdam, and the annex residents are frightened. They hear that Mussolini has fallen, but other worries continue. Mr. Kleiman needs serious surgery. Mr. Van Maren in the warehouse may be untrustworthy. Bep is exhausted by errands, and everyone is irritable. Anne takes medication for depression and compares herself to a bird with broken wings longing for sunlight and air. Margot takes a Latin correspondence course under Bep's name, and Anne studies religion when her father asks for a children's Bible. Miep says she envies the quiet of the annex, but Anne knows the quiet is full of fear. She compares the 8 residents to a patch of blue sky surrounded by dark clouds. Anne also writes a memorial to her fountain pen after it accidentally melts in the stove, consoling herself that at least it is cremated as she hopes to be. Bep must stay away because of diphtheria at home. Mr. Dussel argues with Mrs. Van Daan, and Anne notes that he has never thanked the Franks for taking him in. Anne dreams of Hanley asking to be rescued, and feels guilty that she is safer than her friend. St. Nicholas Day comes again, and Anne decorates a laundry basket, fills it with shoes, and writes verses with her father. Everyone exchanges Christmas and Hanukkah gifts, but spirits are low because the war seems stuck. Anne is grateful for safety but jealous of children who can still go outside. Anne dreams again of Hanley and her grandmother. When she rereads old diary entries, she is shocked by how harshly she wrote about her mother and believes she has grown wiser. She sees herself as an adolescent and writes openly about her body, sexuality, and longing for affection. Because she has no close female friend in the annex, she begins confiding more in Peter Van Daan. She also dreams of Peter Schiff, an older boy she once loved, and feels his face remains clear in her memory. Anne and Peter talk more comfortably, even about private matters, such as the sex of Peter's cat Bosch. Anne is impressed that Peter can discuss the body without shame. As boredom in the annex deepens and the adults repeat the same stories, Anne becomes especially moved by the courage of Dutch people helping Jews hide. One night, feeling unable to depend on anyone, she looks up at the sky and puts her faith in God. She longs to be alone, yet also fears being too alone. Anne's relationship with Peter changes when she notices him looking at her differently. Peter admits that he often feels too nervous to speak and used to fight instead of talk. Anne is pleased to discover that he is emotional too. Later, Peter says he is sorry he was born Jewish and hopes no one will know he is Jewish after the war. Anne is disappointed, though she responds with a wish that the Jews might finally be chosen for something good. Anne begins looking forward to visiting Peter upstairs, though she insists at first that she is not in love. Soon she thinks about him constantly, and Peter Van Daan and Peter Schiff seem to blend together in her mind. Another break-in interrupts her happiness. Anne writes thoughtfully about love, believing emotional love naturally leads toward physical love. She reflects on how much she has changed since her carefree school days, which now feel gone forever. Looking back over her time in the annex, Anne sees stages in her growth. In 1942, the sudden shift from sunshine to confinement makes her stubborn and defensive. In 1943, loneliness and self-criticism deepen her, and she begins feeling more grown-up and independent. By 1944, she understands that she longs not for a girlfriend, but for a boyfriend, and she recognizes new depth in her emotions. The arrest of Mr. M, who helped supply food, frightens everyone, and another knock on the wall renews their fear. Food becomes worse after the people who supply ration coupons are arrested. The residents rely on black market ration books and eat miserable meals. Miep falls ill, and Jan says seeing a doctor is impossible. Anne feels more restless than Peter because he has his own room while she shares with Mr. Dussel. Anne and Margot both grow annoyed with their parents, and Anne complains that the adults are not open about sex. Margot writes that she is a little jealous of Anne's closeness with Peter because she also wants someone to share her feelings with. Anne asks Peter about sex because she believes he knows more than she does, and she writes frankly about her own body. Mrs. Frank forbids Anne from visiting Peter because Mrs. Van Daan is jealous, but Peter invites Margot to come upstairs too. At the end of March, Anne hears on the radio that the Dutch government in exile wants to collect diaries and letters after the war. Everyone immediately thinks of Anne's diary. Anne imagines publishing a novel about the annex someday and believes people may find her account interesting after the war. She continues writing stories and studying hobbies such as genealogy and mythology while food grows scarce. One night, while Anne talks with Peter, another break-in occurs. Mr. Van Daan tries to scare the burglars by shouting, "Police!" but the residents see a flashlight and hear footsteps. Anne is terrified that the Gestapo is coming. Everyone lies on the floor and listens to noises near the bookcase hiding the annex. The danger passes, but the light has been left on outside the secret entrance. Mrs. Van Daan worries the police will find the radio downstairs, while Otto Frank worries they will find Anne's diary. Anne feels that if her diary is lost, she is lost too. The adults phone Mr. Kleiman and wait in terror until a knock comes. They are relieved when it is only Jan and Miep. Afterward, Anne wonders why Jews have been chosen for such suffering. She decides that after the war, she wants to become a Dutch citizen because she loves Holland and the Dutch people. She promises herself that if God allows her to live, she will make her voice heard. And this is where Anne Frank's diary comes to an end. Her final entry was written on August 1st, 1944. Just 3 days later, on August 4th, the Secret Annex was discovered, and Anne, her family, and the others hiding with them were arrested. They were eventually sent to concentration camps. Anne and her sister Margot died at Bergen-Belsen in early 1945, only weeks before the camp was liberated. Anne was 15 years old. Her father, Otto Frank, was the only member of the immediate Frank family to survive the Holocaust. After the war, he helped publish the diary Anne had left behind. Her private reflections would eventually reach millions of readers around the world, transforming the voice of one young girl into one of the most enduring testimonies of the Holocaust. Anne did not live to see her dream of becoming a writer fulfilled, but through her diary, her words have survived, preserving her memory and reminding generations of the human lives behind one of history's greatest tragedies.